Let's take a look at some information charts on Monero for Brave New Coin. Monero is the OG privacy coin that obscures on-chain addresses and amounts, basically by washing everything together in a giant pool. That's generally how most privacy is done on-chain to varying degrees and obviously different technologies for different chains, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. Looking at the hash rate and difficulty for Monero, as it is a proof of work coin, ever since they switched to RandomX algorithm from CryptoNight in late 2019, hash rate has skyrocketed. This algorithm encourages CPU mining over GPU and ASIC mining, and the hash rate isn't one-to-one for the previous CryptoNight, so you can't really look at anything before RandomX and compare it. It's not really similar. Nevertheless, hash rate just continues to skyrocket. Now, some of this is cloud mining, some of this is botnet mining. Monero has a history of being involved with all sorts of nefarious activity and things, but that's just part of what Monero is. It does a job extremely well, better than anybody else in the privacy game, that's for sure. Currently untraceable, as opposed to basically everything else that can be traced using on-chain analysis. Monero's block time is around 2 minutes, so it's also relatively fast, and inflation is relatively low. I'll get to that in a second. The Monero team has a general fund as well. So virtually all coins these days have some sort of treasury in some form, and that's better than devs sort of asking GoFundMe style for donations. A lot of these, I believe, are donations. This isn't like Zcash where it's taken from the mining reward or anything like that, but they're currently holding over 5,500 Monero as of reporting last month. So they have plenty of funds to further development, upgrades, protocol changes, implementations, that sort of thing. Always something good to see. You don't want outside influences paying for development work on something as sensitive as Monero. They also have enabled atomic swaps. And anytime you're using something like Monero with another chain or anything that's not just Monero at a basic level, you're going to run into potential privacy issues because you don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes necessarily, even though it says this works over Tor. Tor is notorious for being monitored as well. So yes, this is an atomic swap implementation, but I would just be careful, obviously, if you're wanting to remain anonymous or whatever with Monero. It's great that it's here. It's just, personally, I wouldn't trust it. I mean, why would you, right? Here's transaction count activity for Monero along with fees. Basically, kind of the only things you can look at for Monero on-chain stats-wise, because everything else, like I said, is obscured. You can't really see active addresses or amounts. So NVT's out of the picture, MVRV's out of the picture. A lot of the stuff that you'd want to see, you just can't. So that's how good the privacy is. You literally cannot look at it. Transaction counts continue to increase. A big jump here. Anytime I see big jumps on a single day, that's usually some weirdness. There's some weirdness here. This could be mining related, could be botnet related, could be a whole bunch of stuff. But it looks like one entity did something on that day, and this transactional activity spiked. And since then, it's retraced significantly. This is more organic, slow rise over time. You usually don't see massive spikes in something unless it's one person or one entity involved there. Not good or bad. It's just important to realize it is what it is. Otherwise, you'd think, oh, this is insanely bullish. Transaction counts all-time high. Well, when you dig deeper, it's probably not as bullish as it seems. Fees are down significantly despite transaction counts being up 3x plus from highs in 2018. Fees are currently around a nickel relative to where they were in 2018 at nearly $15. So the bulletproof changes, the block size changes that they did a while back are paying off dividends now, certainly, as scalability is much better than it was previously. Mining revenue is still quite high despite inflation being around 1.3%. It's probably the lowest inflation rate for a market cap of Monero's size of anything. Bitcoin's inflation rate is slightly higher at 2%, and that'll continue to decrease over time. Monero has a perpetual supply, mining subsidy basically to keep the security on the chain permanently. And currently mining rewards at around 177,000 per day. Zcash a little higher, Dash a little higher, but Zcash's inflation rate in the neon green there is at 11% versus Monero's 1.3%. So if you're a Zcash miner, you're doing much better than a Monero miner potentially on a daily basis per diem, or however you want to think about that, because inflation is so high. But the long-term store value potential is definitely much better for Monero relative to Zcash's inflation. I think people know about that at this point in time. I just like to point that out as often as I can. Google trends for Monero are down from highs mid-year. Like most everything, Google trends are slowing, less searches, less activity, less retail interest, new money interest. As ransomware becomes more popular, more people are going to know about things like Monero because it's part of that ecosystem. That's just kind of how it is. John Oliver did a thing on ransomware and he mentioned Monero. So it's definitely warming to the masses in the minds of everybody as far as what Monero is and does and what it's good for. Flipping to technicals, this is the 1 year MA in the green and the MA multiplier in the red. It's 5 times the green line and then a midline in the white here. So in general, how this works is you want to buy anything below the green zone and sell anything that's getting into the red zone. From 2016 to 2018, this thing tapped that red zone over and over and over again, never gave you a really good entry past 2016. So you always have to be careful and consider, is this a top, or is this just a crazy trend, right? Is this a bottom or is this just going to be a mega bear market? You know, that you always have to consider that. Ultimately, I think those are still good buys and sells regardless of what happens. So you have to be smart about it. Not many charts look like this on the MA multipliers, where this thing tapped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times to the overbought side before eventually retracing. Currently, it bounced off the buy zone and it's on its way back up, possibly to 4 digits if this thing can have another run. Previously got from the buy zone to the midline. The next step would be reaching for the final form of the MA multiplier around $1,000 currently. That's going to keep moving up slowly over time, but it's basically a 3x from here. So I think that's a good longer term risk reward, potentially. This may take a year or more to play out, but it's in the cards, certainly. If we look at the daily 5200 VPVR, Pitchfork here, and RSI, everything looks pretty healthy in general. It had its bull run from Corona March to blow off March in 2021, retraced, and now it's crisscrossed on the 5200, has a golden cross, and probably just continues the slow march over the next year, so long as this trend can remain bullish. But right now the conditions are set for bullish continuation. It's not always super exciting, much like, you know, this move from March 2020 was kind of slow all over the place, super volatile at times, but towards the end of it, it really took off. And that's very possible of how this thing has a path to 4 digits from here. So none of this is going to probably look super exciting relative to everything else, but trend is bullish. And if we want to just measure the previous high to the previous low, 50% of that is 333. And then beyond that, it's 485, 665, 790. So any higher high beyond the current high probably reaches for 666 plus, and 333 is the 50% retracement. And you see that on the cloud as a flat Kumo once a range is established. Currently it's in an active edge-to-edge move to 333, and it'll take some time for all the cloud stuff to flip bullish, for price to be above cloud. This is probably going to take all of September to eventually flip to show the conditions are adequate, because what you want to see on the daily chart is what we saw on the 12-hour, which is bullish Kumo breakout, bullish cloud, bullish TK cross, right? These are all the things you want to see on the daily for me to be convinced that this thing has another leg up. So you can always go to lower time frames and find stuff, but I really like using the daily when it comes to cloud as far as being super sure things are ready to move in one direction or another. Monero BTC on the 3-day basically has been just in a permanent bear market ever since 2018. It really hasn't done much since 2016. It had that big move in 2016 and then just super volatile upside. But then since then, it's just kind of just, not exciting, not anything many people want to trade, I think. So from here on out, I think 01 is a good level. Other than that, maybe buy lows, buy nice stabs down here. Not investment advice, but that's something to watch for as just a rotational trade, typical alt season stuff. But if this thing gets past 01, then we probably have a legitimate bullish trend on our hands. But as of now, it's just sideways down against BTC. Against ETH, it has been also kind of down only since 2017, 2016, just ranging sideways, drooping very near all-time lows here. And again, this is a potential rotation trade as ETH gets expensive relative to Monero. I can see people taking profits into other stuff like Monero with low inflation, has a use case, has utility. That's a potential trade setup here in regards to that. It's always a risk buying all-time lows, and the fundamentals relative to ETH are clearly much different on Monero. But based on technicals, you could have a decent argument for rotating into stuff that looks like this. Lots of DeFi stuff look like this or similar before it broke out. A bit of a bullish div here as well. And against Zcash, it's just kind of a continuous move to the upside since 2017. So everything looks decent for Monero on all fronts. Fundamentals, technicals against BTC and ETH. It's not going to win any awards, but it's a solid altcoin with a legitimate use case. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio I trade for Techemy Capital at Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management solution where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see AUM, performance, allocation, all the DeFi stuff I'm in here, all the trades I make at the bottom here, all the dexes and yield plays I'm making, all of the stable coins I'm currently sitting in, collecting yield, that sort of fun stuff. That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.